What's up, guys? This is Nathan Brother Bob here, or Nathan as you may know me, and today I'm here with a review of the free-to-play game Warframe. Warframe was developed by Digital Extremes back in 2013, and it was released later that year for PS4 and then later the next year for Xbox One. It's worth noting that for this review I'm going to be focusing primarily on the PC version. That's not to say there's anything wrong with the PS4 or Xbone versions, it's just that they get on different update cycles, and also I don't own a PS4 anymore, so it really just makes sense for me to focus on the PS4 version. Digital Extremes is a company that was known for, I guess, their PS3 port of BioShock, their work on Unreal Tournament 2004 and the original Unreal Tournament, and a couple of pinball games back in the 90s, so it's safe to say I actually hadn't heard of them before this game, but Warframe is apparently a massively popular free-to-play game, and it regularly ranks in, the top 20 or so on Steam. So whether you have tried this game or not, it's worth noting this game is very popular, and for good reason. I'm going to get into that now when I talk about the gameplay. To say I have a love-hate relationship with the gameplay is to put it mildly, so I'm going to just focus on one huge positive aspect that doesn't have a negative aspect at all in my mind. The gameplay itself, and by that I mean the shooting and movement mechanics slash melee mechanics, whatever you want to call it, does not have a downside. I think it's very fun, it's fast paced, it's fluid, you can wall jump, you can wall run, you can do really cool rolling attacks, just the movement in general, and that goes alongside with the melee fighting system. Even though it's a bit button mashy, it's really fun, and the gunplay is extremely satisfying. You got to give it a try, and that's what's going to keep you coming back to the game, even when there are, some detailed aspects outside of that will sort of leave a sour taste in your mouth. But the gameplay itself, as you can see, is really cool. It's what you're seeing on screen is just as fun to do as it looks like it is. So yeah, you can roll around, you can fire your gun as you're sliding forward, you can do slow motion bullet jumping. You really are just a space ninja. So for one, that's one of the most fantastic parts of the game. I absolutely love it, and I can't rag on that at all. However, like I said, I do have a love and hate relationship with most of the other aspects of this game. So let's talk about that a little bit. For one system that I really like the idea of is the leveling system. You level your gear up, and that means your Warframe, which is your armor, your primary weapon, your secondary weapon, and your melee weapon. All of those level all the way up to 30. And while you're leveling up, and once you've leveled up, you can put these little mod modules into your weapon that will significantly impact the way you play. For example, you can take a rifle that would normally just be, a very fast, high crit-based, maybe just physical damage rifle. You can mod it up so that maybe it shoots a little slower, but it suddenly is spewing fire and toxic damage. And that may not sound like a big deal. It might just sound like, oh, you're playing with rock, paper, scissors damage types, but there's stuff like status effects and status duration and a lot of really cool customization that gets into that. I love that system. Here's the big negative for me. You have to actually use a consumable item to unlock all of these slots. This consumable item is not super easy to come by until you're in the end game, or you can pay real money for that. I'm going to not talk about the real money aspect because I'm going to just shit on this game once I get to the pay model, but I'm not trying to do that right now. So that's just kind of a silly thing. Like, why wouldn't we just have that from the start? Is there a reason why you need to commit to using this single-use item just so you can make a weapon or piece of armor usable past like level 40? I don't know. Riddle me that. Digital Extremes, I don't really understand it. There's also a prestiging system called using formas, where you get a level piece of gear to max level, and then you can make one of the mod slots more compatible with the mods that you have, and that requires you resetting the level and then leveling up to 30 again, which isn't really a horrible system. I mean, the prestiging system is just a way to sort of ease out, or more like squeeze out more value from the leveling system in general, but I don't really think it needs to be there. I don't know, that's just my opinion, but yeah, I think that also makes the leveling process, I think it just hurts it as a whole. So like I said, I love the leveling system, but they turn around and hurt it like that. Another thing, there is so much gear in this game. Like, just ridiculous amounts of gear. Like, you can buy a ton of gear from the cash shop, you can craft a ton of gear, you can get a ton of gear from, reputation with syndicates or doing quests, but unfortunately, one of the biggest downsides of that is you have super limited inventory space, and you get more slots for your weapons, your warframes, by leveling up your profile level, also known as your mastery rank, or of course by buying slots in the in-game shop. But again, I'm not going to get into that too much, but it's another irritating aspect. Like, why would you make so many weapons available? That being said, there's only so many viable weapons, but as a new player, I kind of want to just craft as many weapons as I can afford to and just limit that by inventory slots. Like, that's, again, just such an irritating aspect. And there's a couple of other things. I mean, for example, the game is super, super grindy. Like, if you want to get any frame aside from the ones that you just grind bosses for, you're going to be killing yourself. Like, for example, we can talk about Mesa or Nidus. Both of those frames are really strong. From what I've heard, really fun. I don't own them, but they're very hard to get. Like, you have to grind RNG to craft things that let you go do a boss that drop parts that is also RNG, and if you don't get those, you got to grind more for the RNG crafting parts to go to that boss again. And mechanics like that, like, I understand that's more of an exception, not the rule, but it's a huge negative for me, and it makes me very sad that they would make the game this grindy. But I mean, that's part of what makes Warframe Warframe. So even though I personally don't like it, it's something that you got to sort of take into account and just realize, you know, it's like, wow, it's like, you know, your average MMO in that sense, that grinding is the gameplay to an extent. So because of all of these factors, I love the gameplay. I love a lot of the features, but there's a lot of things I hate about the game too. I'm going to give this game a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars for the gameplay. Next up, we're going to talk about performance. Before I even jump into the actual numbers, I want to say one really great thing about this game is that it is hands down the best looking free-to-play game I have ever played. It has some really nice particle effects, very decent textures, and a really nice art style, especially the animations. I think the animations are really what sets this game above the rest. You have the very sleek melee animations, the rolling, the jumping, the diving, everything just looks so fluid. And I just have to say, all in all, this game looks absolutely fantastic, completely comparable to any other AAA game, free to play or not. So if we're going to jump into the performance here, we'll take a look at how I did on this, which my 1070 4790K system was able to average around 100 FPS in most areas. So I would say that's pretty good, especially considering I was running at 1440p, completely maxed out with TAA, which is the most intense anti-aliasing options available. I usually use FXAA, but because I can run it with TAA, sorry, I just go for it and it works. So the game runs really well on mid, higher end systems, as to be expected. As for lower end systems, you can see it's not fantastic. I ran it on the shit top, and just in case you guys don't remember, that's a 3rd generation 4-core quad-core i5 along with Intel HD 4000 graphics, so not a dedicated card, but a very decent mobile processor from a few years ago. And it runs questionably. When you're outside of missions, you're usually sitting around 60 frames per second, but when you jump into a mission, I did a capture mission on Earth, which is probably about like the least intense it could get, and it really was not doing fantastic. As you can see here, we're sitting at mostly just 30 FPS, 40 FPS sometimes, and I apologize, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm not used to playing on a keyboard like that. It's very flat. It's hard to do the sort of shift control jump rolling mechanic that I haven't really rebound. So all in all, I'd say the performance is good in this game, definitely decent, above average, but the visuals, which I would have to sort of group into the performance category, are just a step above the rest. So when you put those two together, I have to say this gets a very respectable 4 out of 5 stars for performance. Okay, last but not least is going to be the pay model. And if you thought I ragged on this game a little bit too hard during the gameplay section, well, let's just strap in, because I have some big complaints on the pay model. First biggest complaint for me is when it comes to what things can be paid for that are normally gated behind progression, very little is sacred to our friends over at Digital Extremes. You can For example, say that there is a Warframe that is gated behind lore-related stuff that there's no way you should even be able to find it to put it on until, you know, you've completed the Glassed Gambit, which is the latest quest. Of course, you could just ignore that and pay real money and get it the second you install the game. Say you finished crafting all the parts of a Warframe and you want to put it together and get this brand new Warframe. Cool, do that. Now wait 72 hours because that's how the game works. Or, of course, you can pay real money to skip all that time. Say you want to get this new weapon, you have it, you've crafted it, whatever. You can't claim it because you don't have an inventory slot, but of course you can pay real money for that. Say you want to change the color of your Warframe to anything besides the base 18 colors in the game. That'll be $5 per color palette. So yeah, it gets pretty bad. And I'm not taking into account the coupons you can get. It's actually, if you're going to spend money on the game, you got to spend money on the game only when you roll a 75% off coupon that you can get for your daily rewards. Otherwise, the prices are just insane. But either way, yeah, this game is pretty crazy when it comes to what it's going to let you pay for. There's also a feature in the game, or aspect, whatever you want to call it, called prime parts. Some idiot came up with this, or genius business person, whatever you want to say. And basically, they're just objectively better versions of gear that already exists in the game. So, for example, if there's going to be a normal Frost, say it has 200 base shields. I'm making this up, but I'm sure it's something like that. Well, the Prime version is going to have like 300 base shields. So it's not going to significantly impact your gameplay, but it's just going to be objectively better. And that's so painful to maybe have worked on a Frost and gotten it to this great sort of end game state, only to find out there was a just objectively better version of the gear you leveled just available. And it was available to people who either spent money on the Prime pack, people who grinded it out while it was in rotation, because these items, these Prime parts, they actually can leave the free-to-play circuit and become only purchasable after a while, which is super annoying. And yeah, just the fact that Prime parts exist, you can't really defend that on a fundamental level. They really just shouldn't exist, I think. So yeah, this game, somebody that spends money on the game may not always have a competitive edge. And, you know, competitiveness isn't really a big deal because the PvP in this game is not super important. A lot of people swear by it, but it's not for, I'd say, 80%, maybe even 90% of the people that play the game. You're not going to have a huge competitive edge over the people that spend money, or the people that spend money aren't going to have a competitive edge over you by a huge margin, but the amount of fun they have is going to be just greatly increased. If you have one weapon, one Warframe that you just have completely poured your soul into, and that's like the only thing you use, these people are going to have access to 10 plus Warframes and just unlimited inventory slots and just all the flexibility of a paid game. And that's actually my biggest problem with Warframe, is the way they've done this. I love this game so much, I just fucking wish this wasn't a free-to-play game. I wish this was a $60 game that I could just pay for, get my unlimited inventory slots, no Prime parts bullshit, and just, you know, all this content unlockable from a reasonable means, or even the garbage means that exist now with all the horrible grinding. That would be fine for me, as long as people couldn't just invalidate my effort put into the game by spending X amount of dollars. So yeah, that's my big issue with the game. There's a lot of problems with the free-to-play system. I have to give this pay model a solid 1 out of 5 stars. And very finally, it's time we come to my composite score. Now, those of you who've been following along should know very well what my composite score is. In fact, I'm just going to tell you right now, it is a solid 2.8 out of 5. But because I'm reviewing this game, I can do this how I want. I reserve the right to sort of override that composite score, and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to bump this up and say, even though this game has massive pay model problems, questionable gameplay decisions, I think the gameplay is fantastic. I think the performance on any decent computer makes it worth trying. And just all in all, once you get into it, this game is so addicting, and it's so easy to forget about the crazy paywall mechanics and just go play, and really enjoy yourself for a solid amount of time. So I'm going to have to bump this game up and say Warframe gets a 3 out of 5 stars. If you've made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for sitting through my review. And if you have any comments, any questions, you want to suggest games for me to play, games I shouldn't play, tell me how right I was, tell me how wrong I was, or any of the above, please drop me a comment below. Maybe give me a like so more people can watch these videos. And if you're interested in more reviews of free-to-play games to come, just drop me a subscription. I'd also appreciate that. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.